The trade war between Canada and America continues with no real end in sight, and the verbal, I don't know if you want to call them attacks or trolling that the president is doing along with other members of the administration, or referring to Canada as the 51st state, that is still ongoing, and Canadian politicians are still standing firm in the sand that we will not ever be the 51st state. In fact, there hasn't been a singular politician at any level in Canada that has really entertained that idea, at least not to the best of my knowledge. Then we're taking a look at a bit of a panel that also discusses just the back and forths of the trade war and really the specific details of that. Also, there's a huge movement across Canada to stick it to Tesla because Elon Musk and Orange Man bad. And so there's a breakout protest in Vancouver and in Toronto, I think. We're going to be taking a look at that as well. Then you also have, on a more serious note, attack on Christians around the world, but also here in Canada, which isn't something that I always talk about on this channel, but I want to start bringing more light to it. So I hope you stick around for the full thing. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. And before we get into the news, I do have a message from today's sponsor about protecting yourself. I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Private Internet Access. We're offering my audience 83% off for using code SUNSHINE, which can be found linked down below in the description or the pinned comment below. We're living in a crazy time of censorship here in Canada, and that's all thanks to Justin Trudeau, or whoever the hell is really calling the shots with the Liberal Party since he resigned, but not really resigned. He wants to make sure you can't see the news. He also wants to make sure that you can't access certain content on Netflix, on Hulu, and on Disney Plus, which we all know if you listen to Chrystia Freeland, you shouldn't have Disney Plus. So the way around this is with a VPN such as Private Internet Access. For those who don't know what a VPN is, it's a way to encrypt your data. It's like putting a cloak over yourself so you can freely browse the internet without feeling like your personal information is at risk, or the government getting and then selling your personal information. The best way that I like to go about this, the best cloak that I like to use, is Private Internet Access, which again can be found linked down below in the description or the pinned comment below, or simply using code SUNSHINE. Thank you so much, Private Internet Access, for sponsoring today's video. And without further ado, let's get right into the news, shall we? Starting off with Mélanie Joly, Canada's largest role player, and what she has to say about becoming the 51st state.
Yeah, I think many of my colleagues coming here thought that this issue was still a joke, and that this had to be taken in a humorous way. But I've said to them, this is not a joke. Canadians are anxious. Canadians are proud people, and you are here in a sovereign country, and so therefore, we don't expect this to be even discussed or clearly not laughed at. And so I think you should ask them that question today. We had a very long conversation, the secretary and I. I wanted to be able to have a frank conversation with him. Of course, Canada's sovereignty is not up for debate, and we had a long conversation on tariffs and trade. The approach when it comes to a relationship with the US, and through my conversation with the secretary, was we will put maximum pressure on the Americans. And meanwhile, we'll work on finding off-ramps. Because we know ultimately at the end of the day, the Trump tariffs are going to hurt Americans. What I said to the secretary is Canada's sovereignty is not up to debate, period. There's no argument, there's no conversation about it, there's no need to talk about it. You're here, you respect us, you respect our sovereignty, you're in our country, you respect our people, period. Canadians are anxious, and there is a real fear of people across the country of losing their jobs and their families of being able to have access to decent livelihoods. And so that's why I feel the urgency, and the team feels the urgency of making sure that we are putting maximum pressure on the American administration, the Trump administration, while conveying to the American people, who are the only ones that can ultimately really have President Trump change course, to say to them, well, this is bad for you too. And to all the American friends here today, my message is clear. Trump tariffs are bad for American people.
They're bad for everybody. They're bad for Americans. They're bad for Canadians. It's bad for our relationship with our closest allies and our biggest trade partners. Like, all of this is just so silly. It started off with the border, and I don't want to say I took America's side, but I understood a little bit about penalizing Canada or the Liberal government for its incompetence with the border and with tracking down fentanyl and fentanyl production in this country. That made sense. Like, hey man, you're not really keeping your end of the bargain up. Fix it, or we're gonna implement tariffs. That kind of made a little bit of sense. But since then, it's evolved, and I don't know if it's evolved because our politicians and our government has said, well, we're not going to stand for that. How about we tax you back? And then Trump is now doing reciprocal onto the reciprocal tariffs, and it's just getting out of control. And Canadian and American citizens, I think we all just want this to end. But let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Now let's take a look at the intricacies of this trade war.
How many jobs did you say, David? Sorry.
400,000. And that would take the unemployment rate up towards 8%. I would
Here in Canada
engage in trade action, but where it hurts. I said before on BNN last week at a different interview, I said, when the bully in the schoolyard punches you in the eye, you don't punch back, you go burn down this house, okay? So we're trying to get into a fight with the bully in the schoolyard. No. And tariffs, tit for tat tariffs, not the answer. And you look at me like, what's he talking about? Well, you do it strategically through either export bans or export taxes. Let them pay. Why should consumers here pay back because we're going to retaliate on tariffs? Now, we need the U.S. We know that. We ship 20% of our GDP south of the border. But the U.S. also needs us strategically, especially for critical minerals. Where are they going to get their potash? Where are they going to get their uranium, their nickel, their aluminum, their electricity? Like, I thought that Doug Ford was on the right track with the export tax on electricity, then he pulled back. Why? Because he's going to get a phone call from Howard Lutnick. Look, you can't believe a word that the White House is saying. Okay, you brought up at the beginning of the show about the USMCA. Donald Trump signed that in 2018. And at the time he boasted that it was the best trade deal anybody has ever signed, and now he's abrogating it. And of course the goalpost. I've
heard that some of the trade deals were slightly changed by Biden. I'm not sure if that's 100% true, but maybe somebody down in the comments can fact check that. But if that is the case, then it makes sense as to why he wants to go back and revisit the deals. But again, if Biden didn't touch these deals at all, and if everything in place still to this day, minus the ongoing tariffs, if everything is because of what Trump agreed upon a few years ago or several years ago, then again, like, this is just, it's so ridiculous and it's so unnecessary. I guess I have to be careful how I word things, because the media did try to accuse me of being pro-Trump, and then I played the clip and I actually seem to have said I'm very pro-Trump in the past. But I do like Trump. I think he's a smart guy for America. But when we're on the receiving end of the, the punishing baton, I don't really like that piece. But let me know down in the comments if you guys think this is going to come to an end sometime soon, or if we're in this for the long run. And speaking of long run, we're now going to take a look at some protests where, just visually looking, you can see none of these people have ever ran in their entire life. All right. Protesters gather at Vancouver's Tesla showroom. Sound off on Musk and Trump. I mean, it's just freaking crazy. Dozens of protesters gather outside a Tesla showroom on West 4th Avenue in Vancouver Saturday to voice their displeasure with the company's CEO, Musk. Sorry, America. Tesla funds fascists. I mean, are these mostly like liberals and stuff like that? And isn't that who usually buys a lot of Teslas and electric vehicles, is, people that are doing it for the climate? waving Canadian flags and carrying signs of slogans like Tesla funds fascism and send Musk to Mars, the crowd chanted, saying, "Oh, Canada," and chanted with at least one passing Tesla driver who expressed support for the cause. Protester Lawrence Perry called the turnout incredible. "I am here today because I believe that Elon Musk and Donald Trump and their merry band of oligarchs are waging their tail, are waging a full-out assault on our country, on our people, and I'm not going to stand here and take it," Perry said. And that's not the only place where there was a protest. There was also, I thought it was Toronto. There was also one in Ottawa.
Well, it's the latest in a feud with the United States, except this time Canadian elbows were aimed at Elon Musk as dozens of residents stood in protest out front of a Tesla dealership here in the city. Josh Morano was at the rally today. And Josh, what are you hearing from these protesters?
Well, Austin, the people I spoke with say they're upset with the fact that Musk is questioning Canada's solidarity and place on the world stage, and they're concerned that about the recent rhetoric south of the border.
Dozens of people took to the Tesla showroom on Carling Avenue Saturday afternoon for the first Tesla takedown protest. Organizer Andrea Still says she hopes this protest will lead to one of the more futuristic vehicles on the market becoming a thing of the past in Canada.
We're getting a great response from people driving by, lots of horn honking. So I would say that public support is very much on side with our message.
Tesla's stock price has taken a hit in recent days, dropping 30% since U.S. President Donald Trump rolled out his tariffs.
This is a bit of a push in Canada to make people aware and give that stock drop a little extra push from behind here from Ottawa.
If they want to play games, then we're not going to buy any of their stuff. That's it. You know, if they're shutting down our economy, we're going to try and shut down our economy, then we just won't buy American products.
Protesters argue Canadians should consider selling their Teslas and dumping any shares they may have in Musk's company.
Big concerns for Canada here. We've got to protect ourselves. He also holds a Canadian citizen. I hope the government might consider revoking that at some stage. I know there's a big petition out to see if that can be made to happen.
I guarantee you this freaking schmuck, all right, would not advocate for terrorists in Canada to be deported and to have their citizenship revoked. But apparently Elon Musk is so much worse than terrorists that it's so important for these people to want to revoke his citizenship. I mean, this is just absurd. Like, this is mental right now. This doesn't, like, it's funny, but the fact that it's gotten to this level, it's just so freaking ridiculous.
But yeah, I'm just here with the guy. We're getting lots of response from folks driving by.
Mr. Musk is very intelligent. He seems to probably understand all this and realize what he's getting into, if you will. That, you know, being such a controversial figure will lead to a polarity in terms of his brands, and I'm assuming he's willing to live with that.
With the trade war top of mind, Still says for now, boycotting Tesla is as far as she'll go when it comes to American-made vehicles, adding staying away from them altogether would be difficult.
Would it be wonderful to have fully Canadian-made vehicles? Absolutely. But the auto industry is something that's far more complicated, and we can't just extricate ourselves from that.
I mean, how funny would it be if Tesla had a full manufacturing plant here in Canada, and then all of a sudden Tesla is actually made in Canada for sale to Canadians? That would shut everybody up. What are you going to do when you live in a shoe, right? I am a fan of Tesla. I can say that. I wanted to buy a Tesla, and then my wife and I found out that we were about to have a kid. So my wife found out she was pregnant, and I was like, it doesn't make sense financially to get a Tesla, but maybe someday, which is why for Christmas, my wife got me this RC car right there, which is a Cybertruck. And the fact that it's sitting in front of the salt lamp and it almost makes it look like it's on fire, that's totally like an accident. I didn't do that on purpose. But maybe I should try to take a bit of that claim and say I did it on purpose, because it's kind of funny. All right, what's not so funny though is Jagmeet Singh, who quite literally could be interrupting an early election because, and I've said this before, folks, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Jagmeet Singh's top priority is not to call an election, but rather to support those affected by tariffs with a tariff relief emergency response package, just like they did for CERB during COVID. Let's take a look at this video.
Mr. Singh, you mentioned that you want to pass supports for workers. Would you be willing to work with the Carney government to stay in power even after March 24th?
Well, what I've said is my priority right now is at a time of unprecedented unpredictability and threats to our very sovereignty, that given that seriousness, we need a protection in place for workers, and it's not there right now. Right now, only 40% of workers are covered by the current EI. So for workers that are staring down the barrel of potential job losses in a massive degree, a massive level, they don't have protection. So I want to see those measures put in place. We can make that happen rapidly. We also need an economic plan to create jobs in our own country. We can't predict what's going to happen in the States, but let's have a plan in Canada where we use Canadian products, Canadian workers to build up our country. I want to see that plan passed first, and then an election afterwards.
If it takes more time to get that plan, if it takes more time to get that plan in place, would you be open to cutting a deal with the Carney government to work through to get that plan after March?
Well, yeah, it's going to take time to get that. If that pushes election back a bit, that's fine. For me, the priority is to get this stuff done first, and then we go to an election. If it takes more time to put in place protections for workers, to put in place an economic plan to create jobs for workers, yeah, I'm prepared to have a bit more time to get that done for workers, and then we go to an election.
Do you have a cutoff for how long you'd wait for an election? Would you wait indefinitely to pass this?
No. This has to be done rapidly because people are right now losing their jobs. So there's a time crunch here. Workers are already losing their jobs just on the threats of tariffs, let alone tariffs are now in place and more to come. So we want to see these protections put in place rapidly. We want to see a plan put in place rapidly to create jobs in Canada, and then we can go to election.
Yeah, and like I said, I've said it before, you can go back and watch videos from months ago that Jagmeet Singh's top priority will not be an election. So if it comes to the House is resumed and Jagmeet Singh does get his opposition day, which he is entitled to one more, right? The only person who can call a vote in non-confidence, aside from Mark Carney himself, is going to be Jagmeet Singh. And if it comes push to shove, right, Jagmeet Singh will likely not be going ahead with a vote of non-confidence because he wants to provide a tariff relief package response to the hundreds of thousands of people that are losing their jobs, either fully losing their jobs or reduced hours, because these tariffs are seriously affecting our economy. I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments about that. And now the tail end of the video is super serious. All right. I came across a couple of stories the other day about churches and Christians, churches being burnt down, but more specifically Christians being attacked. So for those who don't know, not too long ago, I think like last week or something like that, you have fear among Syrian Christians after deadly attacks. Members of Syria's small Christian community on the coast are living in fear after attacks killed more than 1,000 mostly Alawite civilians, with Christians reportedly caught up in the violence. The current conflict in Syria does not concern me, but we are its victims. There's no feeling that anyone is protecting us. I feel a mix of both fear and anticipation for what lies ahead in Syria. And this is because, I think it was dozens of Christians were killed because they are Christians in Syria. Right? It's absolutely horrible. And so I was like, oh, why isn't the media reporting on this? Right? Like, is this the Canadian media's job? No, this is in Syria. But what has happened in Canada is also kind of concerning. Since May of 2021, at least 33 Canadian churches have been burned down, with a CBC investigation finding it a steep rise in church fires following reports of potential graves at residential schools. In a different report on the National Post, you have 592 places of worship have been burned in 12 years, and the Liberals don't give a damn, which is extremely concerning. There has been an epidemic of churches being set ablaze across Canada for years now, with attacks peaking after still unproven claims about graves of residential schools, school children, and a prime minister whose response to the issue has done more to fan the flames against churches than quell them. And so it seems like you're comparing residential schools to churches. Is that really what's happening? I got to be honest. I'm finding this out in real time here. Is it because, maybe I should have done my homework on this, but is the attack on churches because of the claims of the residential schools? Is that really what's going on? I didn't know that. Oh my goodness. What the heck's going on here? That seems to be a little, weird that the Liberal or our Prime Minister would set the Christian church as a target like that. Journalists and others trying to assess the extent of arsons being committed all over the country have had few ways of stringing local reports together. And as far as we knew, the Liberal government hadn't been able to either. It appears we were wrong. The government is, in fact, now well aware of the number of church arsons that have been taking place across communities in Canada, and have simply chosen not to relay the severity of these attacks to Canadians. I will be 100% honest, folks. I did not know that churches were being targeted because of the claims of the residential graves, of the residential school graves and all of that, right? I had absolutely no idea. So are these claims supposedly pissed off Indigenous people that are burning the churches? I don't know. I didn't know it was about that. I thought it was just people were just pissed off with Christians. But now it's because the churches, apparently the residential graves are buried under churches and things like that. This just seems like maybe there is a lack of communication, a lack of facts, and now churches and Christians are being attacked. And I think that this is very irresponsible by the government, right? Let's continue this. Between 2010 and 2022, there have been a staggering 592 police-reported arsons at places of worship, including churches, synagogues, temples, and mosques, resulting in damages of at least $10,000. $10,000 minimum for 592 different locations, according to a response to official inquiry filed by the Conservative MP. So it seems like there's just places of worship across Canada that are being attacked. We do not know the reasons for the wave in its entirety. What we do know is that we have the wave crested in 2021, jumping from 58 arsons in 2020 to 90 in 2021. And that's, of course, like peak pandemic. Everyone was bored at home, cooped up, and people were looking for different ways to lash out to different capacities, right? Whether or not Ottawa had been quietly tracking these arsons before Dalton's request wasn't clear from the government's response. What is undeniable is that the Liberals sat on this information about the frequency of these attacks on places of worship for nearly 2 months now, and likely longer. No serious announcement has been made before or after this fact-finding inquiry. I feel like the government of Canada does has a very progressive approach to Islamophobia. I mean, there's an Islamophobia minister relations or whatever in the Liberal government, or something of the sorts. There's an anti-Semitic minister or position of some sorts in the Liberal government. So you have cries of anti-Semitism and cries of Islamophobia, which, yes, that does actually exist. But you also have real attacks on Christianity and places of worship, churches, and there hasn't been any protection by the government. There hasn't really been any publicity by the government. It's kind of crazy. I know some Conservative MPs have brought this up in the past, but it's almost like unless you really know, then you don't know, right? It's not on the news cycle, and that's really concerning. I don't know what else to add to that. I don't know how we're going to stop this, but I do think that this needs to be investigated further. And maybe somebody down in the comments views this and says, hey man, you seem a little bit misinformed. let me just lay it out for you. And I would really appreciate that if people could educate me a little bit more on this. So that's kind of how I'm going to close this video off, is if you have anything you want to add to Christians being attacked and churches being burned, please feel free to put it down in the comments. And let's obviously try to keep it clean, right? But put it down in the comments so that I can learn more about this and can make more well-rounded videos about this later on. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to drop a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in another one. Bye for now.